Major Ukrainian cities are coming under renewed attack from Russian airstrikes. Powerful explosions hit the western city of Lviv this morning. Regional officials say at least 6 people were killed and several others injured. Initial reports suggest the airstrikes targeted military infrastructure facilities, but several civilians have also been reported among the wounded. Lviv had largely been spared the worst of the violence until now. DW's Emmanuel Shaz is in Lviv. Emma, tell us what's happened there overnight.
Well, early in the morning, Terry, there was an alert, an air missile alert, and there were 5 blasts that were confirmed later on by the mayor of Lviv. So when such an alert takes place, everybody takes shelter, everybody goes to the bunker. People here are really quiet, really calm, because they are used to it. Even if the West, as you were mentioning, it had been relatively spared such attacks. But today, 5 blasts on Lviv. And there's been at least 6 people dead, 11 people injured, 11 persons injured, including 1 child. There's also a lot of material damage on 40 cars, but also windows, glass windows being shattered in a hotel, in a nearby hotel where civilians were staying.
Now, Russia says it's targeting military infrastructure in Ukraine. What can you tell us about the target of these attacks in Lviv?
Well, just like in any other big cities, you are bound to find places which will be of interest as a target for Russian military. Of course, the Ukrainian government is not going to tell exactly what is of interest here in the city of Lviv for Russians, but you can think about the railway infrastructures, you can think about military training grounds, for example, which would be of interest as a target for Russian authorities. But like I said, here, people in Lviv had been relatively spared so far, and it's a city where you find thousands of people who have fled from the eastern part of Ukraine, who thought they had found shelter here, and it appears to not be the case anymore from where I stand.
Emma, thank you very much. Our correspondent Emmanuel Shaz there in Lviv. Meanwhile, in the eastern city of Mariupol, a few thousand fighters and some civilians are believed to have been encircled in the Azov-stal steel plant near the port. It's the last pocket of Ukrainian resistance in the city. Russia claims to have complete control of all of Mariupol's urban areas and has left much of it destroyed.
Mariupol has not fallen yet. The port city has suffered the brunt of Russian attacks in Ukraine. It has been under siege for several weeks now. Ukraine says at least 21,000 people have been killed, and those who remain in the city are trapped without the barest of necessities. What is happening here in Mariupol is expected to soon spread to other areas too.
Russian troops are preparing for an offensive operation in eastern Ukraine in the near future. They want to literally finish off and destroy the Donbass, destroy everything that brought fame to this industrial region. Russian forces are destroying Mariupol. They want to wipe it off the face of the earth, and other cities in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions.
On Sunday, Ukraine's remaining troops in Mariupol defied Russia's surrender or die ultimatum. Some 2,500 Ukrainian troops and a few hundred foreign mercenaries are dug in here at the sprawling Azov-stal steel plant. It is now the only known remaining pocket of resistance. Many civilians and children are also sheltering here. With the passing of the surrender deadline, pro-Russian separatist forces say they are now preparing for attack.
There are only 2 blocks of buildings left before the mill. There's a small area around the factory, and the enemy's there, hiding in the basements. We're preparing the ground assault. The artillery will shell them first before we send in close quarters assault troops.
Meanwhile, Mariupol's defenders are set to fight till the end.
Our team of correspondents in Ukraine includes Rebecca Ritter. She's currently in Irpin on the outskirts of Kiev and joins us now. Rebecca, Ukraine's President Zelensky has said that he'll pull out of peace talks if Russian forces kill Ukrainian soldiers defending Mariupol. What do you make of that?
Well, that's right, Terry. Just after that surrender or die order was given by Russia, President Zelensky came out and said if those soldiers, if the Ukrainian soldiers are harmed, if they're killed, then the peace talks will die with them. But in reality, the peace talks have been dead in the water for a few weeks now, ever since the Russians retreated from areas like Irpin, where I'm standing right now, like Bucha, which is famed across the world now for some of the worst atrocities we've seen in this conflict so far. The peace talks really stalled after that. I mean, Vladimir Zelensky continuing to say that peace talks were important and that he wanted to continue them because Ukraine needs peace. But obviously, as the atrocities came to light, it makes it very difficult for those talks to continue. What happens in Mariupol will be make or break for those talks, as Volodymyr Zelensky has said. It has been rumoured that on the weekend, Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich was in Kyiv to try to revive those talks, but the foreign minister of Ukraine has said that Russia and Ukraine still not talking, so definitely wait and see what is going to happen in Mariupol.
Well, staying with Mariupol for a moment, well, we heard in our report there around 2,500 Ukrainian soldiers and also some civilians, we understand, are currently holding out in that steelworks in Mariupol. What more can you tell us about the situation there?
Well, that steel mill, as you say, is a vast network of factories, of warehouses. It's been called a fortress city. There's also an underground network of tunnels, and that is where they have managed to stay away from the worst of the Russian fire. And the reason that the Ukrainians have been able to push back in this massive David and Goliath fight we're seeing in Mariupol, it's also one of the reasons why this time last week, a spokesperson for the Russian military said that they could and would use chemical weapons to try and, quote, gas them out of there. There was then reports that same day that a chemical attack was used on the steel plant. That still remains unconfirmed whether or not that did actually take place, but definitely a sign that Russia is struggling to get hold of that last Ukrainian stronghold because of the vast network of underground tunnels in the urban warfare that Ukraine definitely have an advantage over.
Now, you're based in Kiev, Rebecca, but you've been moving around Ukraine in the last few days. Tell us more about what you've been seeing.
Well, Kiev is a city trying to get back on its feet despite, threats of more Russian rocket attacks, which we have seen signs of over the weekend. There were at least 3 missile attacks in the last 48 hours, let's say. In other areas where I am, for instance, in Irpin today and Bucha, where we've also been, the massive cleanup is underway as after the Russian soldiers retreated. You can probably see the pile of burnt out cars as authorities try and pick up the debris. We've also been reporting from the east of the country where, that part of the country is really bracing for the biggest a renewed onslaught, a renewed bombardment by Russia as they regroup and focus on the Donbass region. And, just basically a massive exodus of people trying to get out of that region before Russia starts bombarding it, which we're expecting in the coming days.
Rebecca, thank you very much. Our correspondent Rebecca Ritter's there in Irpin.